She used to run into my arms, calling me her hero. I held her through sickness, hunger, heartbreak, and now I had to find out she was getting married, from Instagram. No invitation, no call, nothing, as if I never existed. But she forgot one thing. You can delete a person from your guest list, but you can't erase the truth. So I showed up at her wedding, not for revenge, but with one document that turned her perfect day upside down. She said I didn't belong in her new life. But I built that life, brick by brick. And when she tried to rewrite our story without me, I picked up the pen and wrote the final chapter myself. They say a mother always knows. That we feel it before it happens. The silence, the shift, the moment your child stops being your baby and starts becoming someone else. But nothing prepared me for this. I was scrolling through my phone that Tuesday morning, sipping lukewarm tea in the little apartment I call home. It's quiet here, just me, a worn-out couch, and the sound of buses rolling by every half hour. Then I saw it. A photo. Isabel, my daughter. She was glowing, standing in front of a grand staircase, white roses all around her, a sparkling diamond ring on her finger. Her caption read, "Soon to be Mrs. Whitmore. I can't believe I get to marry the love of my life." The likes were pouring in. Comments from people I didn't recognize. "Power couple, can't wait for the big day. You're going to be the most stunning bride." But do you know who didn't know a wedding was happening? Me, her mother. No phone call, no text, no invitation. I stared at the screen for a long time. Maybe I missed something. Maybe she sent it and it got lost in the mail. But I checked everything. There was no mistake. She didn't want me there. I raised Isabel on my own. Her father left when she was barely 3. We moved from shelter to shelter, worked every shift I could find, cleaning houses, folding laundry in hotels, even scrubbing bathrooms at midnight so I could afford her school books. I used to tell her, "You may not have everything, but you have me." And for a long time, that was enough. We had our rituals. Movie nights with popcorn in plastic bowls, dancing in the kitchen to old school soul. I used to braid her hair before school, whispering, "One day you'll be somebody. You'll walk into a room and they'll know your name." And now she was somebody. But the person she became didn't want to remember who helped her get there. I tried to call her. The phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. So I left one. "Hey baby, I saw the post. You look beautiful. Just wondering about the wedding. Maybe the invite got lost?" No reply. Not that day, not the next. A week passed. Then finally, she called. "Hi Mom. Look, it's a really small ceremony. Super intimate, just close friends and Charles's family." I laughed. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She sounded formal, like I was a customer calling the front desk of her life. I sat there holding the phone long after she hung up. My hands were trembling. Not from anger, at least, not yet. From grief. There's a kind of heartbreak no one talks about. Not when a lover leaves, but when your child outgrows you and acts like they never needed you to begin with. But that wasn't the worst of it. A few nights later, I got a call from an old friend, someone who still worked for one of the families I used to clean for. She said she'd heard Isabel had told everyone, that she was an orphan, that both her parents were gone, dead. I froze. My own daughter buried me while I was still breathing. That's when the sorrow cracked. And something colder came through. She didn't just forget me. She erased me. She replaced our truth with a fairy tale. A story where she pulled herself up by bootstraps, climbed her way into high society, and did it all, alone. No mention of the mother who sacrificed everything. No acknowledgement of the woman who skipped meals so she could eat. No trace of me. That night, I pulled out the shoebox from under my bed. Inside, a stack of old report cards with my signatures, copies of the scholarship applications I filled out by hand, her first acceptance letter, paid for with money I saved scrubbing toilets. Proof that I wasn't a ghost, I was the foundation. She wanted a clean slate. But I had the receipts. Still, part of me hoped maybe she was just scared, ashamed of where she came from. I've seen it before. People get a taste of something new and forget the hunger they once knew. But to tell the man she's marrying that I'm dead? To walk down the aisle under a veil of lies? No. She may not have invited me. But I was going to show up anyway. Not to ruin her day. Not to beg for a seat, but to make sure the truth stood tall right beside her vows. Because if she wouldn't tell them who I was, I would. And little did she know, The one person who could shatter everything she built was about to walk through those wedding doors, with the one thing she prayed would stay buried. Me. Fade to black. There's a strange kind of silence that follows heartbreak. It's not peaceful. It hums beneath your skin, like an unanswered question clawing at your insides. I couldn't sleep after I found out. My own daughter, pretending I was dead, smiling in silk gowns, toasting to a future built on lies. But I wasn't going to cry anymore. No. I was going to get answers. The next morning, I dressed in my Sunday best. Not because I had somewhere fancy to go, but because I needed to walk into the past with my head held high. I took the old train uptown, the one I used to ride in my cleaning uniform before sunrise, heading to Lena Kingsley's estate. She was one of the few employers who treated me like a person, not just a pair of hands with a mop. And as luck or fate would have it, Lena had just returned from France, staying in her townhouse alone, with her driver and her dog. I called ahead. She answered on the third ring. "Margaret?" she said, surprised. "My God, it's been years. Are you all right?" I didn't lie. I told her I wasn't. Her place hadn't changed a bit. Same polished marble floors, same towering library, same faint scent of lavender oil and lemon polish. She hugged me like I was family, offered tea, sat beside me in that sunlit drawing room like no time had passed. And then, I told her everything. Isabel's wedding, the missing invitation, the lie about me being dead. Lena didn't interrupt once. She just sat there, eyes wide, her fingers gently tracing the rim of her porcelain teacup. And then, softly she said, "I think I know why." I leaned forward. My heart was pounding in my chest. She took a long breath, then began. "About 2 years ago," she said, "I got a letter from Isabel. Polite, professional, handwritten on thick ivory paper. She said she was applying for a mentorship program in international business. She wanted me to write her a recommendation." I nodded slowly. Lena continued. She included a resume. Glossy, impressive, but something stuck out. She listed her address as my estate, said she lived there from age 16. My mouth went dry. "She never mentioned you. Not once," Lena whispered. "She said she'd aged out of foster care. Claimed she'd worked her way up from poverty on her own. I figured maybe it was her way of surviving, a story she told to get ahead." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. She didn't just leave me behind. She rewrote our entire history. Lena stood up, walked over to a drawer and pulled out a thick file. Letters, forms, photos. "She left this here during an internship," she said. "I didn't have the heart to toss it. Maybe it'll help you." I opened the folder with shaking hands. And there it was, my signature, my handwriting, my name listed as guardian, on every scholarship form, every health record, even a letter I wrote to her high school principal begging for extra tutoring so she could stay on track. I stared at those documents for what felt like forever. This was more than proof. This was the truth, the one thing she thought she'd buried. I thanked Lena and left with the folder tucked tightly under my arm like it was gold. But I didn't go home, not yet. Something was bothering me. Why go to such lengths to hide me? What was she so afraid of them knowing? So I did something I hadn't done in years. I went online and searched Isabel's name. And there it was. A glowing article in a high society blog, Future Mrs. Whitmore, From Orphan to Oracle. The article gushed over her incredible resilience, her journey from foster care to Fortune 500, her one-of-a-kind Cinderella rise, photos of her in designer suits, speaking at events, brunching with politicians' daughters. It was all staged, scripted, perfect. She'd built an empire on a lie, and in that moment, something inside me clicked. She didn't keep me away because she was ashamed of me. She kept me away because she was terrified I'd tell the truth. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, lit only by the flicker of the fridge light. I opened the folder again, spread out the documents like a detective cracking open a cold case, and then something caught my eye. A letter, addressed not to Isabel, but to me, unopened, crumpled in the corner of the folder. It was from a counselor, dated 5 years ago. It read, "Dear Mrs. Margaret Daniels, I regret to inform you that your daughter Isabel has formally removed your name from her academic and financial aid records, citing estrangement. Please sign the attached document to acknowledge this change." But there was no signature from me, because I never got the letter. She forged it. She forged my absence. She wanted them to believe I walked away. But I was right here, every year, every birthday, Every call she didn't return, every visit she never allowed. I hadn't disappeared, I'd been erased. But now, I was done watching from the shadows. I had the truth, I had the documents, and I had one final thing she never expected. A friend in her new world. Lena had one more surprise for me before I left. I was invited to the wedding, she said casually, but I've decided I'm not going. I looked up, confused. She smiled gently and placed a cream-colored envelope in my hand. You are now. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, an official invitation to Isabel and Charles Whitmore's wedding. Elegant, gold-trimmed, with my name, added last minute in ballpoint pen, sloppy, rushed. An afterthought. She hadn't sent it, but Lena had pulled strings. You'll need a dress, she said, and a plan. And I had both, because if Isabel wanted to stand at the altar in a gown stitched from lies, then I'd be there. To walk her truth down the aisle. I stood outside the gates of the Whitmore estate, staring up at the towering ironwork that curled like vines, polished until they gleamed under the afternoon sun. Beyond them, laughter echoed, champagne flutes clinked, classical music floated on the breeze like something from a movie. My daughter's dream life was unfolding, just a few feet away. And I wasn't supposed to be a part of it. But today, I didn't need permission. I wasn't here as her mother. I was here as the reckoning. The estate was massive, like something carved out of a fairy tale. White roses trailed every railing. Strings of pearls and crystal chandeliers hung from the tent canopy like falling stars. It was elegant. Perfect. Too perfect. The guests were already arriving, men in tailored tuxedos, women in designer gowns that whispered wealth with every step. Everyone looked so polished, so far removed from the days I held Isabel in my arms, humming lullabies to drown out the sound of sirens outside our window. I clutched my purse tighter, the folder inside pressing against my side like a heartbeat. Inside it, the truth, proof, receipts, and something else, a flash drive, with documents, photos, audio clips, a digital time capsule of everything she tried to bury, and tucked into the satin lining of my coat pocket was Lena's final gift, an introduction. The valet glanced at my invitation, raised an eyebrow, and opened the gate with a polite nod. He didn't know I wasn't supposed to be there. I walked through like I belonged, like I had always belonged. The ceremony hadn't started yet, but guests were mingling, sipping cocktails near the rose garden. Servers floated through the crowd like dancers, balancing silver trays of canapes. And then, from across the lawn, I saw her. Isabel. She was breathtaking. Hair swept into an elegant chignon, diamond earrings sparkling in the sun. Her dress hugged her like it had been stitched by angels. For a moment, my heart skipped. That was my baby girl. The same girl who used to crawl into bed beside me during thunderstorms. The one who made me macaroni necklaces for Mother's Day. She looked like a queen. But queens don't bury their mothers alive. She saw me, and in an instant, her entire body stiffened. She turned white, her smile dropped. The laughter around her faded as if the wind itself had paused to watch. I didn't look away, I didn't flinch, I just smiled. Not cruelly, not bitterly, just knowingly. Like someone who'd been underestimated for far too long. I made my way toward her. Guests began to notice. Eyes shifted. Whispers followed me like shadows. Isabel stepped back. Her fiancé Charles turned toward me, confused. He looked nothing like the life we came from. Broad-shouldered, smooth smile, expensive shoes polished to a mirror shine. He glanced between us and asked, Isabel, who is this? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. So I answered for her. I'm her mother. You could have heard a pin drop. Charles's brows furrowed. His mother, who stood beside him, regal and composed, narrowed her eyes at Isabel. I thought you told us your mother passed away when you were a child. Isabel stammered. It's complicated. And I stepped forward, voice calm but cutting through the air like glass. It's not complicated. It's cruel and dishonest, but I didn't come here for vengeance. I came with the truth. I reached into my purse and pulled out the flash drive. I held it up like a sacred object. This contains every document, every form, every sacrifice that carried her to this moment. Proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I gave her everything. Isabel's hands trembled. Her perfect posture cracked. People started pulling out their phones. Charles stepped forward. I think we need to talk, Isabel, privately. But his mother didn't budge. No, we'll talk here. This woman has been lied about, erased. If you're marrying into our family, I need to know what else you've hidden. And there it was. The unraveling. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to see me, to acknowledge the years I gave, the nights I stayed awake so she could sleep soundly, the food I skipped so she could eat. But sometimes, the only way to be seen is to shatter the illusion. She reached out, suddenly desperate, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" I looked at her, my daughter, the stranger in the wedding gown. And I whispered, "Because I was never invited to your celebration, but I refuse to be buried by your success." People were watching now, even the servers stopped. The air was thick, choking with unspoken truths and unraveling lies. And then, Charles's mother stepped forward. "I think the wedding needs to be postponed," she said calmly. Isabel gasped, and Charles, his eyes narrowed, looked at her, not with love, but with a question he didn't want the answer to. I didn't stay much longer. I didn't need to. I didn't come to ruin the wedding. I came to reclaim my place in the story. As I walked out of the garden, I passed the mirror set near the reception area, probably meant for guests to admire their designer dresses. I caught a glimpse of myself, not a ghost, not a mistake, not a burden, but a mother, whole, seen, and finally heard. But what I didn't expect was the phone call I'd received that night, from Charles, not Isabel, Charles. And what he told me would make me question whether the wedding should have been stopped, or whether it had only just begun. You know, people often think betrayal is the end of the story. That when someone slices you with words or silence, you either bleed out or disappear. But sometimes, the cut is where the light gets in. It had been 3 weeks since the wedding that never was. 3 weeks since a stunned silence fell over the estate, replacing the orchestra's melody that never got to play the bride down the aisle. I remember the moment vividly. Charles, standing at the altar, bouquet trembling in his hands, guests whispering, Isabel frozen in her veil like porcelain about to crack. Then came his words, measured, honest, damning. "I can't marry someone who hides their past and shames those who built it." Just 12 words. But it was enough to crumble the ivory tower Isabel had tried so desperately to climb. The headlines did what headlines do, twisted the truth into something sharper, louder, messier. Groom calls off wedding over family scandal. Housemaid revealed as groom's mother. Heiress humbled at altar. But I didn't care about the noise anymore. I had stopped living for other people's headlines. What mattered was the silence that came after. The kind of silence that lets you rebuild. 1 week after the wedding, I received a knock on the guest house door. It was Isabel. No makeup, no designer heels, just a plain sweater and jeans, like armor stripped away. She stood there for a moment, eyes red-rimmed, lips trembling. Then, finally, the words she never could say when she still believed herself untouchable. "I was ashamed of who I was, not of you." That landed like a confession and a curse. Because shame, you see, is a hungry ghost. It doesn't haunt the person you resent. It devours the person who holds it in, and for years she had been starving. I looked at her, my daughter, my storm, my stranger. I thought of all the nights I scrubbed her baby bottles in silence, wiped her tears when she scraped her knee, sewed school uniforms by candlelight, and how she had erased me with the ease of a pen stroke. Still, I didn't cry. Not anymore. I placed a hand on her shoulder and said gently, "Healing isn't a gift I give you, Isabel. It's a journey you take yourself." And with that, I walked away. Not out of pride, but because walking away is sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for them and for yourself. A month later, the estate was no longer my world. It was just a chapter, a setting. I had a new story now. It started with a quiet garden tucked between 2 apartment blocks in the city, an old library that had been shuttered for years, its windows boarded up, its shelves empty. With help from Lena and a few kind donors who had seen my story online, we reopened it. Not as a library, but as a community center for single mothers. We called it The Rewrite, because that's what we were all doing. Mothers who had been abandoned, overlooked, shamed, or silenced. We weren't waiting for a hero. We were becoming the authors of our own second chances. Every wall was painted in soft sage green. Every room held books, toys, resources, and the smell of fresh hope. And every name etched into the donor wall reminded me that my story, my truth, had reached farther than the estate ever could. I was no longer just the maid. I was Margaret, founder, mother, survivor. And for once, that was enough. But life, being what it is, always finds a way to keep the story alive. One rainy afternoon, as the center buzzed with laughter and clatter, I noticed a familiar figure by the window. Isabel. She stood awkwardly, clutching a clipboard, her eyes scanning the room like a child on the first day of school. She didn't speak, didn't announce herself. She simply stepped forward and began sorting books onto a shelf, one by one. No ceremony, no apology, just action. I watched her from the doorway, unseen. And in that quiet moment, I didn't feel anger or sorrow. I felt something closer to stillness. Because sometimes the people who wound us don't come back with grand gestures. Sometimes they come back silently, willing to do the work, willing to earn their place again. And whether or not we open the door is a story only time can write. I narrate this now not to villainize her, not to crown myself a saint, but to tell you this. Your worth isn't measured by how someone invites or disinvites you from their life. Your worth is written in what you choose to build after they shut the door. And when they come back, if they come back, you don't owe them forgiveness, but you can offer them a brick, a place to begin. Isabel now volunteers on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She doesn't ask to be seen, she just shows up. The other mothers don't know her past. They just see a woman who listens, helps, folds donated clothes with gentle hands. And maybe that's how a rewrite begins. Not with an ending, but with a comma, a pause, an inhale before the next line. She didn't need me at her wedding, but she'll remember me at her reckoning. Not out of spite, but because the truth always comes dressed for the occasion.